This is Twit.
What was your best resource? Somebody, UJ in the chat room's asking for researching this.
That's a good one. JSTOR is pretty awesome.
Really? So you searched, you did searches?
I mean, I have through my library, through the London Library, which is a fantastic library in London, would you believe, with a name like that. One of the things I get is access to JSTOR. So digging into the sort of, so there's a whole, for example, with the Romans, there's the whole question of the epistolary tradition in Rome, and so there's like a gazillion papers about that. And of course, what I'm interested in is the aspects of the letter writing tradition that relate to whether you're allowed to copy the letters or not, and under what circumstances you do. So that kind of stuff, digging through old papers about that, JSTOR is absolutely fantastic. And then mostly just reading lots of books and lots of academic papers, to be honest.
Yeah, you'll see in the back of if you get the book, you'll see in the back of the book about 8 pages of sources, including the BBC's recommendations for pronouncing doubtful words from 1929.
That one is fantastic. So garage, it turns out the word garage originally in the 20s and 30s. I mean, I have to say that English accents from that period, from the sort of 30s, 20s, sound bizarre.
The Downton era, the Downton Abbey era.
They're not really, yeah, exactly. So at the time, the BBC accepted pronunciation of garage, as we would say today, was garage.
What?
And it had to write, yes, exactly, garage was
garage.
And then it became garage. And so it is extraordinary how, because I have a fairly, received pronunciation BBC voice now, and yet if I watch films set in that the mid 20th century, I find the English accents really quite extraordinary. So we don't speak like that now, and I don't hear people speaking like that now. It is quite bizarre, but that is reflected in that handbook where the BBC is trying to keep up with this.
And it's online. You give a link in the.
It is. And what's funny is that the BBC's justification for this was that people the way the aristocracy spoke was how the radio announcers should speak,
right.
Because it would be the way that people were used to being ordered, told what to do. It had to be like the most comprehensible, because everyone understand this way of talking, otherwise they wouldn't know what to do all day, because they wouldn't be able to understand what their master was telling them. This encapsulates the BBC perfectly, which is that when radio is invented, BBC saying, well, we're going to use it to improve people, and we're not going to broadcast what they want, we're going to broadcast what they should want and what they should want to listen to. And so it's incredibly paternalistic and really quite patronizing. So yes, that's all in there too.
This is fascinating. They talk about the pronunciation of fetish as perceived by the committee members, who included the American scholar Logan Pearsall Smith, the Irish playwright George Bernard Shaw, and 2 lecturers in phonetics.
Isn't it hilarious?
Oh, my God. It's the Académie Française before, wow.
It is. It's the equivalent for this country. So it's very amusing. Anyway, so there's lots of... The other thing that was really striking about writing this book compared with my previous ones is how many books are available on... Well, for a start, with buying books for research, I could just buy them on the Kindle and they would appear right away. So I didn't have to go to the library. So that was fantastic.
Yeah.
But also how many old books are on Google Books now? I mean, if you want obscure stuff in French from the 18th century, there's really quite a lot of it, and so you can get to that. So histories of the French Revolution, things like that. So it's amazing how much that's changed since I last published a book 4 years ago, and was writing it sort of 5 years ago. So hurrah for Google, and that's a great broadening of access to all of that material.
You don't have to delve into the stacks as much as you used to.
Yeah, I like doing some delving into the stacks though. So I did go and look at, for example, 17th century pamphlets from the Civil War as primary sources. But a lot of the stuff you can't do as primary sources. The Roman papyrus, for example, is we don't have. It's all disappeared. So all we have is the repeated copies of Cicero that transmitted him into the modern era.
Wow. Well, it's that's the nice thing about papyri is they last longer than zip disks.
Well, they don't. You see, they do in Egypt if they're buried in sand. It's all
dry.
Nice and dry.
Yeah. But
as soon as you take them to wet Europe, then they don't. We don't have a single copy of the Roman newspaper, for example. Wow. And the only papyrus that I can think of in Europe They found a bit in Greece recently, apparently, that had something on it. But in Herculaneum, next door to Pompeii, a whole load of papyrus was preserved because it was charred, it was burnt in the eruption.
Huh.
And so they have to unpeel it very carefully, and then they can image it using some sort of hyperspectral imaging and figure out what it says. But you really don't get a lot of papyrus surviving 2,000 years in Europe.
So interesting. This is great fun. Thank you, Tom.
Well, thanks for having me.
I really appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.